grandfather, who was a big Phillies fan, who started following the Phillies sometime around 1930, had to wait until 1980. So that's 50 years. So, waiting 32 years, that's a long time. So congratulations to the Dodgers. But my personal philosophy has always been that I tend to, if the Phillies aren't there, then I root for teams that have never won ever. And the Rays have never won. So I like the way they go about their business as an organization, respect them, and I was hoping to see them take their first championship. That said, at PhilliesBell.com, in my World Series prediction piece, I predicted the Dodgers in 5. And I wrote up that their key performer in this series would be Clayton Kershaw. And I think that came to be. He was magnificent in Game 1 when the series was getting tight. He came up with another fantastic performance in Game 5. So I think that while he didn't get the MVP, he certainly was a pivotal performer for the Dodgers. And I enjoyed the World Series this year. I was really glad to see the entire postseason play out. Would have liked to have seen the Phillies first, but it was just nice to see, quote, normal baseball during the month of October.
Yeah, Corey Seager getting the MVP this year in the World Series, and it was a tough break for the Rays. Somebody has to lose. And as you said, the Dodgers have been waiting a long time. I really thought they won before 1980, or after, rather. Sometime within the last 10 years, I would have bet and lost a lot of money that the Dodgers didn't win a World Series ring. It's unbelievable that they've been through so many players and so many millions of dollars. I started thinking they have to be over $1 billion in salary in probably 7 to 8 years paying salaries like they have been, and it hasn't really paid off for them except for this year.
Yeah, they've been very successful, obviously. The Dodgers have been one of the top teams in baseball for well over a decade now. They've been to 3 of the last 4 World Series, even though this is the first one they won in 32 years. They've been to the playoffs for something like 8 or 9 straight years. They have, I believe this was their 8th straight National League West division championship, and they had maybe like 3 or 4 more if you go back into the mid to late years of the previous decade. Everybody here in Philly will remember that the Phillies played the Dodgers in the League Championship Series in both 2008 and 2009, beat them in 5 games both times. So the Dodgers have been if you will, a model franchise for many years now. So you kind of have to give them a nod, and they made the big move this year. They kind of put them over the top in that free agent signing of Mookie Betts. Or, I'm sorry, it was a trade, actually. They got Mookie Betts, and then they signed him to an extension, a long-term extension. But that move to bring in Mookie Betts proved to be that kind of cherry on the top, with the whipped cream and the cherry on the top of what was already a tasty sundae that they were delivering to their fans for a long time. And it proved to be that move, that over-the-top move. And that's what you want when you put out big money on a guy like Mookie Betts. It's what the Phillies hoped to do with Bryce Harper here. And I think the problem, the biggest difference was that the Dodgers were already working with a pennant-winning team. They were already working with a perennial winner when they put Mookie Betts on top of it. The Phillies were working with a loser that was close to emerging when they signed Harper to his big deal. And the Phillies really still needed more. So there are big differences in the two organizations. But again, kudos to the Dodgers. I enjoyed the World Series, and the Dodgers are pretty well set up. They're not an old team by any means. Kershaw is getting a little bit older, but large percentage of their team, the key performers on their team, other than Kershaw and Justin Turner, they're in their 20s. This is a team that's going to be around.
Yeah, it's going to be contending for a while. Speaking of teams that are not contending, with the Phillies, of course, the emphasis on signing JT Realmuto seemed to disappear with this COVID year. And even the free agents that are available are going to get less money for 21, it's been said. I wonder if that affects a JT Realmuto signing for this year. Does he accept a one-year deal and then hope to, possibly multiply that after next year when things, quote unquote, get back to normal, hopefully? He's looking at a $200 million contract, some people say, but which team will actually throw that at him this offseason?
I don't know if anybody will. There are a number of problems for free agents this year. One is the glut in the market. A lot of players are not being tendered contracts. They're being let go by the organizations into free agency. Other players are, they're natural free agents, guys like George Springer, in addition to Realmuto. There are some other big names out there. So it's going to be very interesting. I honestly, God, I couldn't tell you right now. I have no prediction on what's going to happen with Realmuto. I know that McPhail just said yesterday, I believe, that the Phillies are going to take a fourth crack at him. They tried to sign him originally back in 2019 when they had first traded for him. During that year, they tried to sign him to a longer-term extension. Last year, or about earlier this year, they tried to sign him a couple of times, and they just haven't been able to, get that meeting of the minds, find that right deal. And I think all along, Realmuto was ready to go to free agency. There's been a lot of talk that he wants to set the bar he's the best all-around catcher in baseball right now. He's in his prime, 29 years old. He's not going to, obviously anybody can get hurt at any time, but he's not going to, if he's a normal, natural career progression, and you have to believe he will. He's in tremendous shape. So I believe that you're going to see a guy who's got another good 4 to 5 years as far as being a premium catcher in the big leagues. And even after that, he's probably going to be, again, as long as he stays healthy, he's probably going to be an effective catcher for at least a couple of years after that. He may not be one of the premium offensive catchers in the game at age 35, 36, 37, but he'll certainly be able to catch. He'll certainly probably, as long as he's in great shape, he'll probably still be a really strong defensive catcher. He'll certainly be more experienced, be a leader, be ready to lead a pitching staff. So you're going to get a premium offensive catcher for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And then you're still going to get a guy for a couple of years after that who's worthy of being your starting catcher for a contending team. So, the idea is that we're hearing is that he wants to set that bar for all catchers, to be able to make a higher salary in the game. And as the best in the game, free agent in his prime, you have to believe that that's going to happen. I think that you're going to see, in general, less money spent in the free agent market, even though and probably because of there being a glut of free agents available this year. But the top guys like Realmuto, like George Springer, you're going to see those guys get their deals. So will it be the Phillies? That's the $200 million, as you said, $200 million question.
It's a $64 question of the day.
Yeah. Now, I could see the Mets getting involved, which would be bad news for the Phillies. The Mets have a new owner. He's going to want to make a splash. There's been a lot of talk about how much, how wealthy he is, but for me, individual personal wealth doesn't come into it. I mean, that comes into it as far as your ability to be able to buy the team, but every team still has to work within the constraints of the competitive balance tax. Um, so, the Mets are still a big money team. They still have a lot of salary on the books, but if he decides, that he wants to make a splash, he can get himself, one of the best catchers in the game. So, it's just there's a lot of ways that the new Mets ownership could go, but that's one team that I could see taking a look at Realmuto.
Phillies themselves turned in sort of a dismal year. It was a dismal situation going on in the world and in the baseball world for sure, but they didn't make the playoffs even. So if you're John Middleton, you're sitting back and looking at the next several years. Now you're going to need a GM, may need a president. It's just not conducive to signing JT Realmuto right now, besides the fact that he's the best catcher in baseball, possibly, but he's already splashed out $300+ million over a 13-year period for a guy that's been calling for JT Realmuto to be signed. So Bryce Harper, if you want to half your salary and let us afford JT Realmuto, maybe that's the way we can do it. But, I realize they're both friends and they'd like to stay together, but the Phillies really don't have a good reason to throw that kind of money at Realmuto, besides the fact that he's the best catcher. But they're going to be investing $50 or $60 million between two players. Over 1 year, I just can't seem to get my head around that, because you have a lot of other positions to go, starting pitching, so on and so forth. It's just a lot of money to spend.
Well, they do have money coming off the books. Keep in mind they have Arrieta coming off the books and a number of other players. They have the money to spend. It's just a question, like you said, of putting together a complete roster, but you have to pay your star players. And if you believe that Realmuto is the best in the game at his position and is going to stay at an elite level for the next 4 or 5 years, then I think that they have to pay him. But like you said, the Phillies are already paying big money for Harper, but that's not really an impediment. $27 million, 27.5 is what Harper's going to make for years to come for the team. You got Zach Wheeler, they're on the hook for 22.5, I believe it is, to him as far as prorated with the signing bonus. McCutchen's due $20 million for next year, but that's the last year for Kutch, so it's not like you can take that 1 year hit. Kutch is, like I said, $20 million, but it's only 1 year next year. You got Segura for 14.85. Aaron Nola's 12.25. So I think Kingery's on a very affordable contract. He's not really producing yet for it, but he's on a very affordable contract. So what the Phillies are really looking at right now is for next year. They're looking at 5 guys who, doing my math now, 50, 70, 84, they got about $98 million tied up in 5 guys, being Harper and McCutchen, Wheeler and Nola, and Gene Segura. So you throw on top of that 25, say 25 million. I don't know, 4 years. I don't know how many years it would take to keep JT Realmuto, but say you're talking about 25 million, for Realmuto. So now you're up to 120 million, or so for 6 players, and you got to fill out 20 more players on your roster with another roughly, you got maybe $100 million more. You can do that. It's just a question of being smart with that 80, 90, $100 million. Now, I think the real kicker here, Rich, becomes, do they want to spend that money next year? Do the Phillies feel comfortable enough with their expense situation, with their revenue situation, with the COVID, to actually spend the money for 2021? That's up in the air. My own personal opinion is that they're going to take a hit. They took a hit. They took a bath in 2020. They're going to take a bath in 2021 to some extent, I'm sure. But they've been making money hand over fist for years. Middleton got into his small ownership stake of the team back in the mid-'90s. 25 years later, he's got almost 50%, almost 48% control of the team that's worth $2 billion. Now, of course, as McPhail said the other day, owners don't see that money until they sell. So it's not like you can operate off of that. Well, sure, but you can operate in a loss, knowing that's out there. You can operate in a loss knowing that you had profits in previous years. You can operate on a short-term loss when you know you're going to have profits down the road. And if you're not willing to operate on a loss for a couple of years, knowing that better days are ahead, then get out, sell the team. Team's valued out there by Forbes, a reasonable entity that does this for that's what they do, for part of their business, Forbes. $2 billion. So you don't feel like taking a loss for a couple of years, as far as I'm concerned, sell the ball club to somebody who will spend the money. So, the Phillies have the money to sign JT Realmuto. There's no question about that. The question is, are they willing to spend the money on JT Realmuto? Or do they think that they can cover the catching position with somebody else, less expensive, and spread their money out and make a better overall team? And are they even willing to do all that? What are they willing to do financially for 2021 and beyond? So it's going to be very interesting. If I were a betting man, and I'm not at all, but if I were a betting man, I would say that they have to be considered the favorite. Realmuto wants to stay here. He was clearly happy here. He's clearly got a strong relationship with some of the players, especially Harper. I think he wants to be here. I think he hopes that the Phillies make him the kind of offer that he can accept. So it would seem to me like the Phillies would be in the driver's seat, but nothing's guaranteed until they get ink on a contract.
That's true. And as you said, nothing's guaranteed with the 2021 season either for the Phillies or any other MLB team when it comes to having fans back, although we'd like to hope that happens. We'll take a quick look at